It is 6 a.m. on a Monday morning. Justin Meyers with you. The Blazers, coming off of back-to-back wins against the Memphis Grizzlies this weekend, will now be taking on the Western Conference leading Minnesota Timberwolves. Tip-off is set for 5 o'clock. Some good and bad injury news for the Blazers. DeAndre Ayton has been upgraded to questionable for tonight's game. Jeremy Grant, though, listed as doubtful. Scoot Henderson and Malcolm Brogdon both out for tonight's game. Former Blazer Yusuf Nurkic broke the Suns franchise record with 31 rebounds, the most in an NBA game in 13 seasons. But it fell in a 118-110 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder last night. Johnny Manziel, the 2012 Heisman Trophy winner, said yesterday that he will not be attending the annual Heisman Trophy ceremony until the NCAA returns former USC running back Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy, which was stripped from him following NCAA sanctions. We've got Danny O'Neill covering the Seahawks and Chad doing with the Blazers, and Monday starts right now, 620 Rip City Radio. And a very happy Monday. It is RCM. I am your host, Justin Meyers. Super producer Brendan's still off on vacation. Michael Shacker is in his lair. We have got a ton of stuff to dive into on the big show today. Hopefully you all had a fantastic weekend. Let's clap it up for the Blazers. A couple of big wins over the weekend. We will not apologize for winning. Winners will get sprinkles. And going on the road in back-to-back nights, one in blowout fashion, the other one in overtime. But nice win for the Blazers, which, I mean, the wins against Memphis overall this weekend, I mean, it does throw an answer to one of the questions that I have had with regard to this team over the last couple of weeks. And again, just asking questions is not an indictment. I talk about it all the time. It's not a criticism, it's an observation, but I've kind of wondered, there's always kind of a combination of effects. But with regard to the Blazers and the lackluster performance that they have had, really since they beat Damian Lillard in the Milwaukee Bucks, feels like a year ago, but it was just a couple of weeks ago, I said there's three reasons. It's either A, the injuries are too tough to overcome, which kind of significant when you look at the amount of times that guys have been out. B, they're just not very good, and that this roster just was not put together well, and they're going to have to go through some very tough decisions, some very tough conversations in the offseason to essentially kick this rebuild into effect. Or C, which is they're tanking. Well, I think we can eliminate C at this point. And I think it's tough not to think it, considering what happened the last two seasons. It's tough not to look back and be like, boy, all right, well, it's the All-Star break is for the fans, but it's really the trade deadline for the Blazers. And the last couple of seasons, trade deadline comes. They were sellers the last 2 years and shut down all players with ability and talent and started losing games. That's what happened the last 2 years. And this year, trade deadline came. They weren't really anything. They weren't buyers. They weren't sellers. They were just like, we're not going to do anything. We got a lot of injuries. And boom, losses started piling up. And you can't help but look back and wonder, like, are they tanking? Are they actively tanking? But I think we can kind of eliminate that after this weekend. And I realize it's 2 wins against Memphis, and Memphis is actively tanking. Like, Memphis, jaws out. They traded away Steven Adams. That is a team that has wiped their hands and thrown up their arms. What other analogy you can use on the season? They're done. But if the Blazers were actively tanking, I think we'd see a little bit less of Anthony Simons. So now it comes down to the other two issues, and we'll see what happens the rest of the season. And also, it's going to be a completely different beast taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. But now for the rest of the season, injuries and or roster. That's the tough question moving forward. Like, when you look at where this roster or where this organization is going to be moving into the 2025 season, is this simply just a matter of getting guys healthy? Or is this a matter of massive roster construction? But we can kind of eliminate the tanking. So we'll dive into the Blazers. And like I mentioned, Chad Doing is going to be joining the show coming up in hour number 3. So we'll talk to Chad. Also, we're going to talk some Seahawks with Danny O'Neill, who covered the Seahawks for years and years and years. And we'll get his thoughts on what is going to be the Seahawk identity, which normally you think about that in terms of college football, right? The head coach kind of sets the tone and sets the culture. Clearly, like Alabama was a reflection of Nick Saban. Georgia is a reflection of Kirby Smart. Usually because the amount of turnover that goes on in the NFL, you don't normally get that. But you are going to see a different Seattle Seahawks approach to a lot of things that we haven't seen for, 14 years? It's been the Pete Carroll way, right? Let Russ cook. Nope, Pete Carroll. Let's run the ball. Let's be conservative. So we'll get Danny O'Neill's thoughts, not only on Mike Macdonald, the new head coach of Seattle, and obviously bringing in new coordinators and a complete overhaul of the coaching staff, but what's going to happen with Geno Smith? Are they going to be looking quarterback in the first round? What's going to be the ultimate identity of this team? What is John Schneider, the GM, going to look like in terms of roster construction now that Pete Carroll is not in the room? Because for years, it was always John and Pete together. Well, now you got a young coach. Obviously, he's going to have his say when it comes to the draft, but the majority of roster decisions, it's going to be now 100% on John Schneider. So we'll talk some Seattle Seahawks coming up in the second hour as well. And in approximately, 15 minutes or so, because the Combine is going on right now. We're going to talk about the Combine in just a moment. But the NFL Combine is going on right now in Indianapolis. And one of the things that happens at the Combine is you get a lot of preliminary NFL meetings. And there's some discussions about potential changes to the NFL rulebook. So we'll have thoughts on, is the chain gang going to be going away, which is something I've been calling for years and years and years? Will they finally be changing the fumble out of the end zone rule? Will the tush push be banned? And are there massive, major changes coming to the NFL kickoff? A lot of discussions, a lot of meetings. I'll give my thoughts coming up in about 15 minutes on the big show. And we will go around the NBA with Round Ball Rock and a lot of other things that we are definitely going to dive into. But obviously, the Blazers getting a couple wins over the weekend. Nice start. The Combine going on, and quarterbacks are always going to be the main course when it comes to offseason discussions. Who's throwing at the Combine? Who's not throwing at the Combine? Should you worry about if somebody throws at the Combine? Should Caleb Williams be throwing at the Combine? Here's the fascinating thing about the Combine. I thought about this weekend. It's a very lazy take. It is a very lazy take to come out and criticize the Combine, right? It's a bunch of players in spandex, running around cones, not playing against defense, bench pressing 225 pounds, jumping and vertical leaping, being measured and interviewed and everything else. And it's kind of lazy to be like, wow. The best way to evaluate football players is to watch them play football. Here's the fascinating thing, though, about the Combine. It has almost equally worked and failed at the same time. Evaluating football players from college to the NFL is incredibly difficult. We have seen, the fact of the matter is we have seen number one overall picks, multiple, completely fall apart and just are not capable of playing. And we have seen the very last pick in the NFL draft take snaps in the Super Bowl, and was even mentioned in the MVP discussion. We have got guys who were undrafted, 7 rounds, went through every NFL team, had multiple picks, and guys were overlooked, undrafted, who've made the Hall of Fame. And then we have number 1 overall picks, multiple, for top 10 picks, top 5 picks, get in, clearly not ready to play. Evaluating football players from college to the pros may be one of the toughest things to do in terms of front office decisions. Sure, there's probably a lot that I'm not thinking of right now. But what other entity in sports has such a wide variety of third-round quarterbacks that go into the Hall of Fame? Tom Brady was a 6th rounder. Brock Purdy was the last pick. Jamarcus Russell was the number 1 overall pick. Vince Young. Those guys are out of the league. And the fact that you've got the combine where the odd thing about it is sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? I'm watching ESPN right now. Standout stars in the combine, and it's fascinating to sit there like, wow, that guy is way faster than I thought. That guy is way taller than I thought. That guy is way stronger than I thought. How does it evaluate, or how does it translate to the football field? Well, not quite sure. We don't know. But there have been, in the combine, workout warriors. Guys who went away after their senior year or their junior year of college football, loopholed the system, figured out the combine hack, which is come in shape, run a good 40, practice the shuttle run, impress a bunch of scouts, do a bunch of bench presses, and then show up, upgrade your draft stock, and show up, and clearly you're not ready for NFL football. And then there have been guys, C.J. Stroud last year, case in point. Now, C.J. Stroud, it wasn't the Wonderlic, but it's whatever the new test is. But C.J. Stroud went in, and all the reports, and again, all these reports are also used as smoke signals, also used as agents trying to manipulate the system. But all the reports out of the combine last year, C.J. Stroud did not do well with whatever. It's not the Wonderlic anymore, but whatever the new cognitive test was, decision-making. Yeah, but I watched C.J. Stroud play football. I watched him play for Ohio State in the national semifinal and nearly take down Georgia, who would go on to win the national title by like 50 points. I watched that dude play football. Offensive Rookie of the Year. Clearly a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Took the Texans to the playoffs. You've got this whole thing set up with years and years and years of tweaks, and it still kind of works for some players and kind of works for others. Oh, did you see a dude's bench press? Yeah, but can he get onto a field with pads on and move another guy? But then there's also the opposite, right? Where you get guys who are just in a system in college that's set up for them, and they get to the comments like, that guy is way slower than we thought. I don't know if there's ever been any kind of evaluation tool that has both equally worked and failed as much as the combine. But when you get to Indianapolis, you get all these guys together. The NFL is going to hold meetings. So rumors circulating about potential rule changes to the NFL. We're going to dive in to some of the hot rule topics that could be coming down the pike for the competition committee coming up next. We've also got Round Ball Rock because lots of stuff going on around the NBA this weekend, not just the Blazers, but a ton of stuff. Boy, the Warriors got just smoke showed. Nurk brought down 31 boards, so we'll dive into that as well. But before we do all that, I do need to tell you about Oregon's roofing, siding, windows, and bath experts. That's right. I'm talking to you about DeBella, and there's probably something that you have been all thinking about in 2024, and that's how you can save some money. Well, by upgrading your roof with solar shingles, you could potentially pay for that roof with savings and federal and state incentives. All you got to do is contact DeBella for all the details. Plus, their estimates are easy, convenient, free. That's the best part. And they are scheduled on a time that works for you. You've probably seen their work in Better Homes and Garden, Real Simple, HGTV. Plus, they've got 15,000 five-star reviews for the work that they do in people's homes. You could be the next five-star review. They have got accolades from Angie's List and Home Advisor. Plus, the financing opportunity is something you do not want to miss. That's right. DeBella is offering 0 down and no payments until 2025 on approved credit. So check out DeBella for a free, no obligation appointment for roofing, windows, siding, and bath. That's your experts at DeBella. All right, welcome back. Obviously, pumping everybody up with the music there, Shacker. You know, it's like it's 6:20 in the morning. We don't want to be responsible for maybe a potential crash on the road. Can't be putting people to sleep. Anyways, welcome back to Rip City Mornings. Combine going on in Indianapolis, and there are all sorts of things with, the bench press and the shuttle run and which quarterback is going to throw and who is up their stock, who's lowered their stock, risers and fallers. How did they do in the interviews? The weird interview questions. Are you more of a dog person? Are you more of a cat person? Right. And then the Wonderlic tests and the cognitive tests and the all sorts of but there's another thing that goes on at the combine as well. Because here's what I think most football fans understand this, but the combine, it's in Indianapolis every year. And it is the football bros week out. Not fans. That's like the draft. That's like the Super Bowl. Not for fans, but for front office people, for scouts, for coaches, all coaches from head coach down to the lowest of the low on the totem pole. Indy is their chance to football bro out. And the NFL understands when they get a bunch of people there, we got GMs, we got owners, we've got executives. All right, let's talk about what just happened throughout the season before we get into the actual official meetings. And so you get a lot of rumors about some of the potential rule changes. So according to Tom Pelissero from NFL Network, four discussions for potential rule changes, one of which I am shocked that we're still dealing with. And it is not the fumble out of the end zone. More on that coming up in a bit. But it looks like there are potentially four rule changes or rule discussions up for discussion. I could say discussion one more time. All right. So let's start with the tush push. It sounds like the tush push is here to stay. For years and years and years, the quarterback sneak was maybe one of the most boring plays in all of the NFL. And I understand that if your team has got the opponent on 4th and 1 or 4th and half a yard, and now for a lot of teams, it's just inevitable, especially for Philadelphia, that they're just going to pick that up. And I understand the frustration. But for years and years and years, the quarterback sneak was one of the most boring plays ever. And all of a sudden, they changed the rush or the aiding the runner rule to where you can push from behind. It's a big old scrum. More and more teams are going forward on 4th down. Overall, this is a good thing. All right, so this is what we need to really understand with regard to rule changes. I think there's two reasons for rule changes, and fairness ain't one of them. There are two reasons why you would discuss a rule change. A, player safety. That's just the New World Order in the NFL. For years and years and years, they did not care about player safety, except for the quarterbacks when they came up with roughing the passer. And they're like, well, we can't rough the kicker either. And maybe we won't let them grab each other's face masks. But reason number one why you would ever come up with a change in the rules, player safety. After that is entertainment value. That's why you change rules. That's why you tweak rules. That's why you kind of, all right, overtime rules. How many times have they been changed? When we were growing up, they would go to overtime. It would be, boom, sudden death. First team to, well, then kickers got really good, right? Kickers continued to get really, really good to where all of a sudden now you get a couple of first downs and you're like, all of a sudden, a 47, 48-yard field goal, which back in the day, back in the 90s, that was kind of a monster field goal back then. That's child's play now. So they're like, well, these overtimes aren't very entertaining anymore. It's kind of one with a coin flip. So then they tweaked it. And it worked for a while. Like, all right, well, if you go down and just kick a field goal, well, the other team score a touchdown. And then, well, Josh Allen didn't get to touch the football in the postseason overtime period. So then they had to change it up, ultimately leading to where we were all very confused watching the Super Bowl this year going, wait, would they get the ball? Who gets the ball? If they score here, is it over? It's not over. Wait, when the 15 minutes is up, is that over? Do they restart? Should have just stuck with sudden death. But everything is either based upon player safety or it is based upon entertainment value. And I would say maybe there's an honorable mention third, which is how does this affect gambling? Basically, every replay review rule change is based upon gambling. The NFL is raking in hundreds of millions of dollars just from gambling advertising, not to mention the billions of dollars that are wagered each and every year. So, therefore, you get more replay, right? These sports books, they want as much replay as possible. The last thing a sports book wants to do is to have some bad fumble call. It's not reviewable, and then somebody gets a backdoor cover, and now you got to pay out. So the gambling company, they want as much stuff reviewed as possible. By the way, more on the gambling coming up in the last rule change. But it's player safety, it's entertainment value. And for me, if you could take off your fandom, take off your emotional attachment to your team, and you get to a place where you can just look overall, tush push is kind of fun. More teams are going forward on fourth down. And here's the other thing. If you keep it in the rules, just looking back at the history of not just NFL football, but the history of football, defenses are going to find a way. Defenses are going to find a way. They always do. There's a lot of really smart dudes and a lot of really talented dudes, and somebody right now is sitting in a dark room somewhere, probably in the NFC East, trying to scheme away the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, the runner-aided quarterback sneak. And by the way, just because Philadelphia does it better than everybody else because they've got Jalen Hurts who can squat like 600 pounds, and they have a center in Jason Kelce who may be one of the greatest centers of all time, it doesn't mean it works for everybody. It runs at about a 50% rate, not counting the Philadelphia Eagles. They run it at like a 94% rate. It's insane. It's insane. It's because they got their personnel. But defenses are ultimately going to find a way. They always do. I was there. Most of you were there as well. It's crazy to think of it. It was 15 years ago now. 15 years ago, Chip Kelly took over the Oregon football program, and they were already running no huddle, somewhat fast pace. And then Chip Kelly took over and took the governor off that Mike Bellotti had on the offense and said, nope, we are going at warp speed, Commander. And it took a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden the blur offense started kicking, and defenses didn't know what to do. We can't substitute guys in and out. This is like it's like the most ridiculous fire drill we've ever seen. Players running in, players running out. They're snapping the ball every 12 seconds. We can't even get any substitutions in. And coach was like, "Oh, do we need to outlaw this?" Nick Saban even said, player safety wise, two things happened. One, there was a substitution rule change, but two, defenses found a way. And now everybody runs no huddle in college, and it is not like the defense does not have a chance to get stops. Defenses will always find a way. In the NFL, you watch once, and I think Jason Kelce put out a tweet. He probably is retiring. When Jason Kelce's not there for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think we're going to see the success rate of the tush push come down because teams are going to figure out a way how to defend it. Just what happens in the NFL. But it sounds like discussions are ongoing, but that rule is going to stay. I think it's a good rule. Going forward on fourth down is fun to watch when it's not your team, right? That's the whole asterisk in all of this. is when it's not your team. Yeah, it's fun to watch teams go for it on fourth down. All right, and then we have the dreaded end zone fumble. That's right. We see it every single year. The end zone fumble. Been around since the inception of the game of football. When a offensive player fumbles the ball, that ball goes into the end zone and out of bounds. Boom, there's your touchback. It is the most punitive rule. I think I'm using that term correctly, but it has the biggest effect on a game. Because not only do you not score, but you lose the ball, it's a turnover. Now, the reason the rule was created was a long time ago, before there was the forwarded fumble rule, right? If you fumble on the 2 and the ball goes into the end zone and say some offensive lineman from your team hops on it, right? Well, we're going back to the 2. It's the holy roller rule. I think it was the Raiders in the 70s, like the holy roller, fumbled it forward, ultimately scored a touchdown. The NFL was like, well, we can't have that. But the reason the whole end zone thing was there is because they didn't want player going down at the 2, fumbling, doing air quotes, fumbling the ball into the end zone to a player that's just standing there. And again, this is like 1930s stuff, gang. But then they changed that in the 70s with the holy roller rule. So why they didn't change the end zone fumble rule back then, I'll never know. Now, I believe it's happened 4 times. This is like, the end zone fumble is like the shark attack of NFL football, right? Somebody goes into the ocean, gets bitten by a shark, not even attacked by a shark, because that's where the shark lives. You went into the shark's house. That's what happens. But you go into the ocean, you get bit by a shark, massive news. And then what happens? All the shark experts come out and say, well, more people were killed by vending machines falling on top of them. You get all these ridiculous stats, right? More people died from coconuts falling from trees and knocking people unconscious. And yeah, but it doesn't matter if you're one of those sharks or if you're one of those people that got bit by a shark. But every single year, this rule comes up. Every single year, it gets shut back down. From an entertainment perspective, I don't think it changes anything. Obviously, this is not a player safety rule. From an entertainment perspective, does it change ultimately the game of football? If you fumble from the 2, and that fumble, instead of going out of bounds at the 1, hits the pylon, well, that's out of bounds, right back to the spot of the fumble. We've got all the cameras. We can see exactly where everybody fumbled. Boom, right back to the spot of the fumble. Simple fix. Everybody's happy. It's an outdated rule that was fixed like in the 80s, but they kept the other rule in there. And I know it's like, well, when you're around the end zone, you need to take care of the football more. That's the reason why. Yeah, but does it make football better? No, it doesn't. Kickoffs are getting wild, gang. To me, the whole kickoff discussion, now this is a player safety thing, that the most injuries seem to happen during kickoffs and during kickoff returns. That's when players get hurt. Obviously, we have to have a kickoff. The idea that every once in a while gets floated around, which hasn't been, but it's like, well, why not just start at the 25? Because it's football. We have, it's a ceremonial thing. You have to kick the ball off. If you kick it out of the end zone and then we go to the 25, we get our fun, whatever pre-kickoff thing we do as fans. Ball goes into the end zone. We go to the 25. Every once in a while, you get a kickoff return. To me, I've always thought, no harm, no foul. You have to put a a prepared kick return team out there just in case. You have to put a prepared kickoff team out there just in case. But if 90% of the time you kick the ball out of the back of the end zone and we start at the 25 and all right, let's play some offensive football, I got no problem with that. See, these are the problems with all these rule changes is too many people overthink it. If it's a player safety thing, fine. Let's talk to some doctors. Let's talk to some trainers. It's an entertainment value. Let's talk to some fans. As a football fan, have you ever been to a football game and you're pumped up? You go to a tailgate. You meet with some friends. Get into the game. Grab yourself a soft pretzel and a slice of pizza. You're in your seats. Here comes the team. Here comes the pregame announcement. Like if you're in Seattle, they're flying the 12 flag, everything. And then they kick the ball out of the back of the end zone to start the game. Do you ever think like, boy, that just was a real letdown? No, because nobody cares. It's ceremonial, but you got to have it. So apparently there is multiple different models talking about moving the kickoff, the football stays where it is, but moving the kickoff coverage team up. And they say, well, how would you do onside kicks? Oh, well, yeah. For an onside kick, you would either have to, and these are the discussions that are going on right now, declare, hey, we're trying an onside kick here. So we're going to go back to the normal way of doing a kickoff. Not going to do the new way of moving guys up. We're going to go back to the normal way because we are declaring we are onside kicking it. Or the 4th and 20, which is you get the football where you are in the fourth quarter, down. You get one snap. You get 20 yards on a play. You continue the drive. And therefore, it's offense versus defense. Again, just keep kickoffs the way they were. All right, they're kicking it out of the back of the end zone. No big deal. Onside kicks aren't very successful. They're not supposed to be. It's supposed to be super hard. That's the other thing. It's like, well, you know, if you add in this, you declare it, it's going to make actually for more successful onside. Yeah, onside kicks are not supposed to be successful. It is desperation. It's like half-court shots in the NBA. They're not supposed to be successful. It is a desperation heave. Kickoffs, the way they are, out of the back of the end zone, onside kicks, the way that they are. Nobody has a problem with this. I have never once hung out at the bar with the boys and had a discussion of, God, we all love football, right? We can't wait for football season. But, boy, these kickoffs really are just bumming me out. Why are we changing anything? Kickoffs are fine the way that they are. You don't need to declare an onside kick. You don't need to fix it to where you can get rid of the touchback. Get a kicker with a big giant leg, kick it out of the back of the end zone. We get our ceremonial thing. You get the guys on the kickoff team, sprint to the end zone, pump up the crowd a little bit, and then we'll put the ball at the 25. We'll get the offense out there, and then let's play some ball. It's a massive, massive problem, and I think it's one of the things where, football off-season is always so important, but every once in a while we can just take a deep breath and get away from the game a little bit. Don't need to change it. And then lastly, and I'm going to dive into this a little bit more in depth a little bit later on in the program, but we may be seeing the end of the chain gang, which, by the way, is long overdue. I understand the entertainment value of, hey, here come the guys, run out there, stretch the chains. Oh, he didn't make it. First downs are so valuable. First downs are so valuable in the game of football. And we still have sticks and chains and eyeballs determining it. We have lasers and GPS in our world, gang. Like I'm not for more technology in sports, but necessary technology in sports. We got GPS and we got lasers, gang. All right, so there you go. Potential rule changes coming up in the NFL. We are going to wrap up hour number one. We have got Round Ball Rock. News and notes around the NBA next. 620 Rip City Radio. All right, so was this Michael Shacker is producing the program today? Was this on a show yesterday too? By just missing all the hints being dropped on the intro music, or do you just want to like go back to like sophomore year?
I know nothing about country, so that's why I picked this song. I thought you would like it.
And Edwin McCain. Oh, I mean, it's a fantastic song. This was every sad. If you were my age, like this is like every sad dude in college. It was a very emo time in our world. But yeah, the Edwin McCain. This and I think it was became like top 5 like wedding song of all time. There was a good run. It was a good run from like I would say like 2000 to like 03. You couldn't go to a wedding without the Edwin McCain song on. Anyways, all right. Coming up in hour number 2, we're going to be joined by Danny O'Neill. Covers the Seattle Seahawks. We'll talk some Seattle sports. Also, interestingly enough, got some hot Enchanted Forest takes. That's right. The kind of theme park just south of Salem got some hot Enchanted Forest takes. So we're going to talk to Danny O'Neill coming up in the third hour. We're going to talk to Chad Doing Danny O'Neill's in the second hour. That's coming up soon. Chad Doing is going to be joining us in the third hour and get his thoughts on the Blazers. Back to back wins. We'll take it. Needed to get off of that L train and put some dubs, but the Blazers back in action tonight. And as I mentioned in the update about 40-some minutes ago, DeAndre Ayton upgraded to questionable, so we'll likely see DeAndre Ayton back in the lineup tonight. Will we see Jeremy Grant? He was listed as doubtful, I believe, with quad soreness. Scoot Henderson, Malcolm Brogdon, still both listed as out. But a lot of other stuff going on around the NBA, so we need John Tesh to help us out with some Round Ball Rock. Here we go. All right, Yusuf Nurkic pulled down 31 boards yesterday. Unfortunately, that did not help the Phoenix Suns pull off the victory as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander dropped 35 points on the Phoenix Suns as the Thunder get the win. 118-110. All right, don't look now, but Victor Wembanyama is slowly but surely taking over the NBA. And I like bold prediction, the month of March is going to be like the month of Wemby. You are going to see more and more teams in contention, resting guys. Right? If you look at the standings right now, especially in the Western Conference, nobody outside of the top 10 really has a chance. The Lakers are going to have to go on a massive losing streak, and either Utah or Houston is going to have to catch fire. So for the most part, the only thing going on in the Western Conference for the last month of the NBA, which, by the way, Adam Silver probably hates this, but this is the way it all shook out because you moved it to 10 teams. But the only thing that is going to be a factor is not going to be who's in the postseason, but you have got Dallas, Phoenix, Sacramento, and New Orleans. Those 4 teams sitting at 5, 6, 7, and 8, and there's going to be a run to try to get above the play-in line. But for the most part, right, you look at Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Denver, and I'll throw in the Clippers as well, kind of separating themselves from the pack, and you are going to see teams, especially older teams like Golden State and the Lakers, continuing to rest more and more guys. So what does that mean? It means we're going to see more Victor Wembanyama. Last night against the Indiana Pacers, by the way, a Pacers team that's sitting 8th in the East right now. Wemby went for 31 and 12. This was after the showdown last week against Chet Holmgren. 31 minutes of action for Wemby, 11 of 17. Pulled in 12 boards, dropped in 31 points. Had 6 blocks and 6 assists. So Wemby Mania, it took a good minute but Wemby mania is starting to take off. Obviously, the big blowout last night, or yesterday afternoon, I should say, was in Boston, 140-88. That's right. The Boston Celtics beat the Golden State Warriors last night, 140-88. The Warriors scored 38 points in the first half. 38 points in the first half. Jason Tatum dropped in 27. It was a triple-double for Luka Doncic, 38, 11, and 10, but wasn't enough for the Mavericks, who'd lose to the Sixers at home. Tobias Harris with 28 points. And Blazers are going to be taking on the Timberwolves tonight. Timberwolves coming off of a 1-point loss in like a throwback 90s style 89-88 as Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers took down the Timberwolves last night in Minnesota. 32 points for Kawhi. Anthony Edwards also had 27 points. So Timberwolves bouncing back against the Blazers. And then I think probably LeBron scored another milestone, 40-some thousand points, which is ridiculous. Over the weekend, we're going to see more and more LeBron milestones. His legacy is his availability, right? His legacy is the fact that he has been able to do it at such a high level for such a long period of time. So get used to continuing to hear about LeBron James, milestone after milestone. But probably the biggest news over the weekend was Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson went down for the New York Knicks. Looked awful. Looked terrible. Turns out just a bone bruise. Knicks get the win, 107-98 over the Clippers. And I think Brunson kind of listed as day-to-day, but he's going to be one of those guys that, you're a top 4 team in the East right now. No need to push it if you're the New York Knicks. Little bit in trouble of falling kind of below the play-in line, especially if the Miami Heat kind of catch fire. But it looked disastrous for a moment for the New York Knicks. And as I mentioned, Blazers back in action tonight. They'll be taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. They will likely have DeAndre Ayton. Might not have Jeremy Grant. More on that coming up later on in the big show. Also coming up in hour number 2, Danny O'Neill is going to join us. We're going to talk some Seattle Seahawks and the new face of the Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald. So hour number 2 coming up next here on 620 Rip City Radio. It is 7 a.m. on a Monday morning. Justin Meyers with you. Blazers now coming off of back-to-back wins against Memphis over the weekend. They now set to take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Tip-off is at 5, and some good and bad news for the Blazers on the injury front. DeAndre Ayton was upgraded to questionable, so he will likely be back into the lineup for the Blazers tonight. But Jeremy Grant listed as doubtful with a quad strain. Scoot Henderson and Malcolm Brogdon both still out, along with Shaedon Sharpe. Former Blazer Yusuf Nurkic broke the Suns franchise record with 31 rebounds, the most in an NBA game in 13 seasons. That followed a 118-110 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder on Sunday night. And Johnny Manziel, the 2012 Heisman Trophy winner, said over the weekend that he will not attend the annual Heisman Trophy ceremony until the NCAA returns former USC running back Reggie Bush's trophy, which was stripped following NCAA sanctions. Danny O'Neill joins us in 20 minutes. Hour 2 starts right now at 620, Rip City Radio. All right, Chad Dewey's going to be joining the show in hour number 3. Get his thoughts on back-to-back Blazer wins. And I've been doing a lot of big picture stuff with the Blazers. I think we're kind of in like medium picture time, right? Small picture is, hey, Blazers facing the Timberwolves tonight. What's up with DeAndre Ayton? It's going to be nice to get him back into the lineup. What's up with the injury front with Scoot? What's his prognosis? Right, that's small picture stuff, which is great. And then there is big picture. It's kind of like medium picture stuff with the Blazers. You got about a month and a half left in the season. Clearly, if you look at what they did over the weekend, they are not trying to tank the games away. I don't know how stoked they are to keep piling up the wins, but if you look at the way that Anthony Simons played on Saturday, if you look at the way this team has been battling in those 2 games over the weekend, clearly not trying to tank. So what is the goals? What are the medium range goals? Because I always hear about short-term goals and long-term goals. We're medium. Like, what's wrong with the good old medium? Years and years and years ago, if I could get, like, we do grumpy old man stuff. We'll get off my lawn tomorrow. But, like, yeah, you used to be able to buy a medium, and then they found out, nobody buys medium. You went to the movies, like, can I just get a medium? Yeah, well, for a quarter more, you can get 12 more ounces. That's like getting a whole can of soda for a quarter. By the way, maybe, like, the greatest sales pitch of all time. In all seriousness, like, think about the great, and I'm not in sales. Tip of the cap to everybody who is. I am not in sales, but for some reason, popping up on my TikTok feed, I get a bunch of, like, this is how, like, think about if you ask this way, but then ask it this way. And then I'll get another video where it's like, when people ask it to me this way, I'm like, clearly you've watched too many videos. But, like, the greatest sales pitch of all time is just, or the greatest sales work of all time it's going on right now in our world. And that's Girl Scout cookies. Delicious cookies. They used to be $4. Now I think they're $5 or maybe even $6. I don't know. But a delicious box of cookies, real quick price point, sold by adorable little kids in with sashes and berets and merit badges. How can you say no? Like, wife and I went to Fred Meyer. Shout out to Fred Meyer. Wife and I went to Fred Meyer. Had to, like, come up with a game plan. Because, I don't know about you, can't have the Girl Scout cookies in the house. Yeah, we've had this discussion on the program. And, Shacker, I don't know if you care to dive into your thoughts, but I've always wanted, like, what is the most addictive, like, food item in terms of, like, chips at the Mexican restaurant, breadsticks at the Olive Garden, the refillable fries at the Red Robin, and then I'm gonna throw Girl Scout. We always sleep on the Girl Scout cookies. Because the Girl Scout cookies, like there's like especially the Thin Mints, you can't eat 2 Thin Mints and then put them back. The whole sleeve is gone.
Yeah, I noticed the Girl Scouts are now out selling their cookies at stores. Do you notice that sometimes they set up outside, and then in some stores they set up inside the store? Do you ever notice that, and then do you feel more bad for the ones who sell them outside of the store?
I mean, the ones outside
More likely
are the real like warriors. You know what I mean? Like that's how it used to be done. I don't know who you got to know to be able to set up inside the store, right? Does your mom or dad have to like know like the manager? Do you have to grease the wheels a little bit? Like what is going on in this game? Because yeah, you used to have to sit outside, and they always sold them in February and March, and around here it's freezing, and that's the way the game was played, right? I also saw this was devious, and again, tip of the cap as I doff my fake cap on the YouTube. Tip of the cap. I don't know who they knew, but there's a particular Starbucks, and like most Starbucks, right, the drive-through line, it like circles around like a half moon. So you go in one, and then like you take like a little left turn, like a 90-degree turn, give your order, and then you kind of just sit there. And if Starbucks is busy, like on a Saturday morning, then you are stuck in gridlock, right? You're stuck in gridlock. You can't get in, you can't get out. That's the genius talk about the psychological, like whoever thought of the drive-through. It's like, yeah, once you're in, you are trapped. And I saw at the Starbucks right there at the first left-hand turn, boom, there's a troop of Girl Scouts just slinging cookies left and right. And I don't know how much they must have made, but it had to be, because it's like, oh, you're gonna spend $4.80 on a coffee, huh? How about maybe kicking down a couple extra bucks and maybe getting a box of Thin Mints and help out these kids? But yeah, at the store, I don't know if there's a racket. I don't know if there's an inside track, but I give respect to the Girl Scouts who throw down their cookie game outside in the month of February and the month of March. That's the real champions out there, Shacker.
Yeah, it just got my attention. It was snowing this weekend, so that's what got my attention. Some sell outside, some sell inside. But going back to your original question, yes. Was it food that's just you shouldn't eat, but you eat it anyways because it's so delicious?
Well, and it's the food you can't stop eating, right? Because I went and had some tacos and some margaritas this weekend, and I was full. I was done eating. And the chips were in front of me, and I can't stop eating the chips. The chips at a Mexican food restaurant, like you cannot. It's impossible to stop eating them. You just can't. And I threw out like the breadsticks, at Olive Garden. They're tough. They're tough to put down. And then refillable fries. Also, just like the rolls at like the Texas Roadhouse. You know, the honey butter rolls. I think I'll throw in. Have you been to a Red Lobster recently with the Cheddar Bay biscuits at Red Lobster?
No, but I've made those because they have the mix at Costco.
Oh, you go home.
So I've had those.
You're just like you're gonna put the little Shacker twist on the Cheddar Bay biscuit.
Yeah, I just don't eat lobster, but I would eat those biscuits.
You realize there's other food at Red Lobster that's not lobster, right? You don't have to just walk in. They walk in and be like, all right.
Yeah, but it's cooked in the same kitchen as all that seafood, so I'm not going to eat it.
Are you out on just all seafood in general? Like all
seafood?
Yeah,
all
out?
Seafood.
Anything
no, thank
from
you.
a body of water, you just say, no thank you.
Nope.
Unless you breathe
I'm not gonna
oxygen,
eat that.
Shacker's not going to consume you.
Yep.
Not even like a shrimp?
None. No way.
Did you have like a bad experience, or was this just a thing you just determined? You're like, I am a land walking
I don't like the
man.
smell. I just don't like the taste. I've been around it, and I don't like it. And I had a family that ate a lot of fish, so I learned how to cook, and I cooked my own dinner those nights.
All right, so Cheddar Bay biscuits are in, like, you've never been to a Red Lobster, but let's just say when they bring those out, they go fast. real fast.
Yeah. But this could be any kind of food from the store because for me, it's Cheez-Its. I mean,
Cheez-Its are you once you pop
crack open the box, nonstop.
Cheez-Its are good. You get like the big. They have like the big ones now with the ridges in them.
The big ones, the extra baked, the buffalo flavor. That's all great.
I'm a Triscuit man myself. Would you consider a Triscuit a cracker, or is a Triscuit a Triscuit?
Oh, I never thought of it as its own thing. I always thought it was just a cracker called Triscuit.
I mean, I love them. If I were to rank, we do a cracker ranking right now, real quick. A Triscuit right now, number one. That's my number one. I know it probably isn't yours or the listening audience. Cracker ranking. Number one is a Triscuit. Number two is a Wheat Thin. Wheat Thins are very, very good. We used to think because they're baked, not fried, that they were good for you. And they put thin in the title. By the way, that was...
Yeah, and wheat's good for you.
Yeah, wheat's good for you.
It's got fiber.
It says thin. They're baked, not fried, right? So, yeah, they're just as bad for you as anything else. But Wheat Thins are delicious. I would go Triscuit. I would go Wheat Thin. I think I'm going Ritz third. Then I think I'm getting into the Cheez-Its.
Well, at least it's in your top five.
Yeah,
that's good.
Cheez-Its are good. Like, I'm with you. I'm not hating on the Cheez-Its, but yeah, in terms of like food that is just you cannot like once you what was it the old Pringles, once you pop you can't stop. Pringles are good too. Anyways, obviously I'm very, very hungry right now on a Monday morning, but like once you open a sleeve, and I think that's why whoever is working the psychological operation there at the Girl Scout facility, like headquarters, they've got it figured out. The sales, impeccable. You can't like it. I walked out of Fred Meyer, had a plan in place. I still felt bad. Like, I don't owe them my $6. I did not want to eat a whole box of cookies that day, and I knew that was exactly what was going to happen. When I walk out of a normal store and I don't buy something, I don't feel bad, but I feel bad walking by, and that's what they want you to think. And then the other part of it is especially those Thin Mints and the Samoas. But the Thin Mints, like, they don't have a resealable pouch so where you can like, let's just open it up, grab 2 or 3 Thin Mints, and then reseal them because they want you eating that whole sleeve. That's it. They want it inconvenient to where, oh, man. We had all these Thin Mints. Now I opened them. You get like in the plastic when you open the Thin Mint, it's got like a fault line. It just completely massively opens up, and then they spill out. You're like, well, I got to eat all these now, and before you know it, you got to go back and buy like 4 more boxes. The Girl Scouts have got it figured out. They've got the whole thing figured out, but I still feel like most addictive thing, like food item, I'm putting chips at, like regular chips, I can put them down kind of, but chips at the Mexican food restaurant, they're a little warm, and you got that good salsa, can't put them down. I think Girl Scout cookies might be number 2, though. Eating them when you do not want any more. The Girl Scout cookies might be right there. And then for Shacker, it's the Cheez-Its. Do you have to like hide the Cheez-Its from yourself?
Well, I've done that when you buy it from Costco. You get 2 bags.
Yeah.
So I want to hide the second bag so maybe it lasts a little bit longer. Longer till I open it.
All right. Coming up, we're going to talk to Danny O'Neill. I worked with Danny when we were both in Seattle. Danny has the Dang Apostrophe, which is a Substack, covers the Seahawks, featured on Mitch in the Morning podcast. So Danny O'Neill is going to join us. We're going to talk some football coming up in just a bit. Also, Chad Doing is going to be joining us in the third hour of the program. But before we get to all that, I do want to tell you once again about Oregon's roofing, siding, windows, and bath experts. That's right. I'm telling you about DeBella. And updating your home with DeBella is so easy. That's right. You can get a free estimate right now. It is convenient. It is free. I mentioned that earlier. And it is scheduled on a time that works for you. They'll work around your schedule. And not only is it easy, it is money saving. Because if you upgrade your roofing, your siding, your windows, even your bath with energy efficiency, you can save a ton of money on your utility bills. Plus, they've got solar shingles. That's right. If you update your roof with solar shingles, you could pay for your roof potentially with savings to your energy bill and federal or state incentives. DeBella's got all the details. It's easy. 15,000 five-star reviews on Google. Plus, they've received accolades from Angie's List, Home Advisor, and I told you about the financing opportunity, but I'll tell you once again, because it is amazing. 0 down and no payments until 2025. That's right, 0 down and no payments until 2025 on approved credit. So check out Oregon's roofing, windows, siding, and bath experts, DeBella. All right, currently in Indianapolis, Indiana, there is a lot of hopeful future football players running around in spandex, doing cone drills, running routes without defense and without pads and helmets, and all for the evaluation of potential NFL teams. One of those NFL teams, Seattle Seahawks, got a new head coach. Same GM. Are they going to be going quarterback? What is the new look Seahawks going to be? Joining us now, my good friend, whom I worked with in Seattle for a handful of years, who has the ability to make me laugh and furious within the same sentence. Danny O'Neill back on the Big Show. Good morning, Danny. How we doing?
I'm good. How are you, Justin?
I am doing fantastic. I am. I always love when I get the old band back together. You know what I mean? Like there was a run, and I think people in the Portland area probably get sick of me talking about it because I talk about it often. But I get to talk to you, I get to talk to Jim, I get to talk to Brady, and I get to bring the old band back together because there was a special time. And I like to recognize that special time.
Well, I hope that you've explained to people that you once went through combine drills.
That is true. There was the well, no, actually, you know what? I didn't get to go through the combine drills. So you did.
Really?
I was
did, because I made a total farce of it. I wore a suit.
So for those that don't know, the Seattle Seahawks one time they had the media combine, and Danny knows this, and people in this listening audience know this because I don't shut up about the fact that I work out. Still do. I'm a CrossFit bro. Can't change me. All right, I'm not changing. And I was pumped. I was pumped because there was another person that we worked with who also fancied himself very physically fit. And Danny, I was going to crush him. I was going to crush him and let him know, and I was going to, announce my presence with authority in this. Yeah, they ran the media combine right during my time slot. I could not get off the air. I was told, no, you're not going to the media combine. You have to do your own show. And I got to watch you with a headband and a suit take on the media combine.
Do you remember what my time was in the 40?
I don't know.
6'1".
6'1". That is moving. That is moving.
No, that would be moving. That would be acceptable if you're 380 pounds. I was not 380 pounds. And the fact that I was wearing a full suit with a bow tie does explain why I was so slow.
Listen, the fact that you got from yard 0 to yard 40 without ripping a hamstring to shreds is that's victory in and of itself.
Oh, I do not remember you couldn't. I remember that there was no showdown with the other fella.
Yeah.
I remember that there had been no head-to-head. I didn't realize that it was that you hadn't been able to participate. I believe that you were denied your shot at glory. I believe that we have an Uncle Rico moment here.
Danny, Coach would put me in. I don't know if you win a combine, right? I don't know, like if they announced a winner.
Sure you do.
But if they did,
sure.
I would bring home that trophy. Although Brady took it very seriously as well. So I don't know. He had me by a couple years though. He had the youth movement.
He did. Brady is exceptionally fit, not extraordinarily fast. Not extraordinary. I don't believe Brady is a sub 5 second 40. And there's a couple guys in the media combine who have done sub 5 40s, which is acceptable. Like I believe that you can be described as a fast person if your 40 time is under 5 seconds. Not a fast football player, but a fast person.
I mean, but it is funny. Danny O'Neill joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. And I'm going to attempt to transition it back because it is fascinating when you get normal dudes. Like, we sit back, and not all of us, but we sit back and we 4.6. Oh, that guy is slow, right? We sit there and we watch these kids running 40s at like 4.68. Put down the Cheetos, kid, and it's like, you don't understand how fast that is. Like, I've tried to explain to people how fast, like, a 90-mile-an-hour fastball is. You don't understand how fast that is. And to go to, like, 100, and to see, like, at the combine, because you mentioned it, like, 6 seconds, 5.5, like, the amount of speed you have to run a 4.6, and we just look down our nose like they are jogging is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And the times are important. Like they're not unimportant, but it's also not like Xavier Worthy ran the 4.21. I don't think that is going to tremendously affect his draft stock. That confirms what a lot of people had thought, that he is extraordinarily, like, jaw-droppingly fast. But the bigger stories are, well, Kyrie Jackson had one of the times, the corner out of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
He ran a 4.5 in the 40, and that is faster than some had thought or had been. It put out there a number that is going to elevate his draft stock in the minds of a lot of teams, because it's like, okay, he meets our requirement for that. He meets our specs there, and I think he could move up a round or two.
Well, I was talking about this earlier, Danny. That's fascinating about the combine. I think it's equally worked and not worked in terms of evaluating players, right? There have been plenty of guys where they came in and you go like, oh my God, like they must have been in the wrong system in college. Coach didn't like them, whatever. And you look at their combine performance like, oh man, they are really. And then there are guys where it's just like it hasn't worked. And I think the argument always comes down to quarterbacks, right? Should you throw? Should you not throw? And Caleb Williams isn't going to throw, and Penix and Bo Nix, they're both going to throw. I mean, is there a consistency to that? Is it kind of year in and year out in terms of quarterbacks deciding to throw or not throw as an evaluation tool for these guys as GMs and drafting players?
I think it entirely depends upon where your stock is as a player. Caleb Williams has no reason to throw. There's no good that can be accomplished from that. And so if he went out there and decided, hey, I'm still going to do it anyway, maybe that makes teams feel a little bit better about his competitive drive. But strategically, like just in terms of tactics, there's no advantage from that. For Bo Nix and Penix, both do have an advantage of throwing. And I would say that Bo Nix maybe even more than Penix, because there's a lot of talk about how far Bo Nix throws on the field. I was actually reading a story today that was talking about Bo Nix's micro-passing. That was the term that was used for the number of balls that he throws that are completed at or behind the line of scrimmage. And the assumption that people have of like, okay, that's not going to go and work in the NFL. And then you look over history, the number of players who've had similar numbers, and the first 5 of them are, well, there's 3 Washington State quarterbacks, because Mike Leach had his quarterbacks, whether it was Luke Falk or Gardner Minshew, loved the short passes. And you're like, well, that's not a great body of evidence. And then you get down there, number 7 or number 8 is Patrick Mahomes. And you realize that that's actually not some sort of predictive stat, that describes how Bo Nix executed the offense that he was in. And so for Bo Nix, I think throwing does provide him with an opportunity to show that he is someone who projects very well in an NFL scheme because of his size, and that he can run a little bit, and more than a little bit. And he's got an arm that can do anything you would want an NFL quarterback to do.
Danny O'Neill joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, let's talk Penix real quick. Now let's understand that you and I are both emotional about this topic. I ultimately respect Michael Penix because he just put it on my team, man, and I'm so glad he is not playing anymore. And I know you love him because of the things that he had done up there in Seattle for your team. But
I love it because he put it on your team 3 times.
Right in my
3
face.
times.
Right in my face, Danny. Right in my face as my husky wife is shouting in my ear in Autzen Stadium. Like that happened. Anywho. But is there, okay, I'm going to start out. Is it a thing with left-handed quarterbacks in their evaluation? Because you keep hearing about, this weird motion, his weird motion. The only thing, and again, I'm far from a quarterback fundamental guy, but the only thing weird about his motion, Danny, is that it's on the wrong side. Is this a left-handed thing, or is there something with, like, his delivery and his motion that is something to take a look at? I just look at the ball goes wherever he stinking wants it to go, and that's kind of all that matters.
What jumps out to me is the velocity that he generates without stepping into throws like you normally see quarterbacks do. I don't think his release looks weird. I think that he makes throws that I've watched him make where when the ball comes out of his hand, it looks like it explodes, because the mechanics of how he throws, I don't understand where he generates the power from, because it will look like times that both his feet are set and he's just throwing all arm, and then the ball comes out and it's just a rocket. And in that way, I don't think Penix's release. Look, he gets the velocity on there. Like you can't deny, or no matter how he does it. I do think it's unorthodox, but I don't think that that's the issue. I think the bigger issue for him is going to be the question of durability, and even if when he runs, or if he runs his 40 at the pro day, he did not run in Indianapolis. That question of, even if he moves pretty well, he's probably not going to be someone you want running, because you just don't want him taking hits given his injury history. I believe Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix probably goes in the first round. I definitely think Bo Nix goes before Michael Penix, because there are going to be some teams that just don't see him as a draftable player because of his injury history.
All right, so let's talk Seahawks, because it's a lazy take, but it's interesting because the Seahawks went out and got Ryan Grubb as an offensive coordinator. Michael Penix is right there. I don't know what the long-term future is for Geno Smith. Is this a guy that maybe they like, let's just hang on for another year, find a rookie quarterback to come in behind? But usually, as soon as they made the Ryan Grubb hire, it was like, oh, they're going to draft Michael Penix. I don't know if I was buying that, because I don't know if that's the best thing to have with a first-year head coach who's never been a head coach before, is the college hero sitting on the bench while maybe Geno Smith is having, a mediocre game. But when you look at kind of where the Seahawks are now, and John Schneider's coming from Green Bay, an organization that loved to draft quarterbacks behind quarterbacks, what do you think, A, is the long-term plan with Geno Smith, and B, do they go kind of quarterback shopping this year?
The answer to the first one about what's the plan with Geno Smith, I do believe that they like Geno Smith as their starter for 2024. I don't think that they know how they feel about him beyond that. I think that they're going into this offseason thinking, we've got a pretty good situation. We don't need to go out and look for someone like Baker Mayfield. We don't need to find another veteran. Some people have said Justin Fields, if he becomes available, could see him fitting in Seattle. I'm not sure about that. He's certainly younger and has some tools that Geno Smith doesn't, but he's also, in 3 years, he's taken a ton of sacks, and there's really only been a half a season stretch where Fields wasn't committing the kind of turnovers that are backbreaking, where he's held on to the ball at an acceptable level for an NFL quarterback. Only half a season of the 3 years he's been in the league. I don't see Justin Fields as an upgrade.
Yeah.
I could see how they might. So I think they're going into this with the belief that Geno is our starter. We think we get to the playoffs with him. We think he can be the guy, and if he does that, then we'll look at continuing. If he doesn't, we've got to have an auxiliary plan, and that's where the second part would come in. Single biggest surprise to me in John Schneider's 14 years as GM is that they've drafted 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson and a guy named Alex Magoo. And I don't know if that means that John just did not subscribe to what they did in Green Bay, which was to habitually draft quarterbacks, or that Pete putting his thumb on the scale and saying, no, we've got our guy. I don't want to draft someone and disrupt our confidence in him. I tend to think it's the latter. It wouldn't surprise me if they drafted Michael Penix, but Michael Penix is not the kind of quarterback that you draft and say, okay, eventually he's going to take it over. He's the kind of quarterback that you draft and say, we think he's got a chance to develop into a starter. And honestly, watching Geno's play these past couple of years, I actually think that I think Ryan Grubb's offense could work exceptionally well for Geno Smith, because the one thing that Grubb has done is that the last 2 quarterbacks he's worked with, Caleb Hayner and Michael Penix, Jacob Hayner and Michael Penix, neither one of those guys was considered an NFL draft prospect before they started playing for Grubb. Hayner ended up being drafted in the 4th round by the Saints out of Fresno State. And now you've got Penix, who is seen as, I think, probably a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. I absolutely could see Geno Smith thriving in that system.
Danny O'Neill joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. You mentioned Russell Wilson, Danny, and I mean you covered Russell as closely as anybody in his time in Seattle for all the greatness, the weirdness, everything kind of in between. And now here are we really in a spot now where Russell Wilson might not have a starting job in the NFL? Like 3 years removed from being talked about, is he an MVP candidate? And then all of a sudden the 2 years in Denver, like what the heck happened with Russell Wilson? Did he leave the nest and it was turned out that Pete Carroll and the system was perfect for him? What the heck happened with Russ?
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I look at it as, which is, and when Russ left, I think there was a fair question of who did more for who. Has Russ kept Pete afloat because their defense has been terrible for a number of years? He's really been the only great thing that they've had going on. And I think the answer to that was no, actually the system and what Pete did and the way Pete, I don't know whether protected him or forced his coaches to coach around and to Russell's strengths instead of turning it over and letting him run sort of an Aaron Rodgers-like offense like he wanted to was the best thing for him. But he's had two coaches in 2 years, and neither one of them, in the case of Nathaniel Hackett didn't have the juice to push him out, so he was the one that got changed. And then in came Sean Payton, and he didn't like the way Russell played. And I will say this. I thought Russ did a better job than I thought he would. I thought Russ this past season was going to try to give Sean Payton exactly what he wanted, and that the result was going to be a huge uptick in turnovers. Instead, Russ played the way Russ always plays, which is he holds onto the ball forever. You go 2 3/4 with the offense doing absolutely nothing, and then go pull some plays out of his hind parts at the end, and you look up to it, and you're like, oh, my God, they won. And Russ didn't have a bad season. Like, Russ had a season that I thought wouldn't have been one of his best seasons in Seattle, but that's the kind of thing we saw from him, and it drove Peyton nuts. And that was very evident. And now he will be going somewhere. I think that Russ will end up being a starter. My handicapping odds, I think the most likely destination is Las Vegas. I think the second most likely destination would be Pittsburgh. I think he would be great in Pittsburgh. I don't know if that'll end up happening. They're still making noises like they like Ken Pickett. I think him playing in Pittsburgh could be an awesome fit for him. If he doesn't go to either of those two teams, I think you might see a situation where he waits until training camp to find an injury and then ends up going somewhere that needs an injury replacement.
Danny O'Neill joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, one last thing before we let you go, Danny. We got to talk about it. Your ongoing rivalry with the Enchanted Forest. We have to talk about it for people that don't know. Danny, you grew up part of your childhood in Klamath Falls. You made a trip. That's a long trip.
15 years. First 15 years of my life, I lived in Klamath Falls.
You lived in Klamath Falls, and made a trip to the Enchanted Forest. It's a long trip. It is an underwhelming amusement park, but it brings up the phenomenon because here's the thing, Danny. As much as we've joked about this, you're not exactly wrong. Okay, you're not wrong. The Enchanted Forest, for what it is or what it was supposed to be, is like, really, this is it. But it brings up the phenomenon of like things that aren't that great, but they're ours. So we kind of like, you're not allowed to talk bad about it. Like, I would imagine there's a lot of kids around Federal Way who think Wild Waves is the greatest, but Wild Waves stinks. It's terrible. It just looks good off the freeway.
It's not the Enchanted Forest's fault. I want to make it clear. Like, my opinion about it it says more about me than it does about the Enchanted Forest. Both my parents were from Southern California, so I had gone to Disneyland and I had gone to Magic Mountain, and we were on a trip. I believe it was with my junior high in Sacred Heart. We went up to Oregon, or went up to Portland to see OMSI.
Yeah.
And on the way, we stopped at the Enchanted Forest, and I was like, yes, amusement park. And I get out, see what it is. I felt like somebody invited me into their backyard for freaking story time. It was absurd. I felt ripped off. I felt that this was the biggest. That sign was a disservice and a crime against childhood. But the Enchanted Forest, like, these are placards with paint on it. Yeah, I don't like the Enchanted Forest.
Poor Humpty Dumpty, just sitting there. Like, yeah, all like, it's true because it is. We all did it, but like, I don't know. As Oregonians, we kind of protect it for some weird reason. I was like, no, it's not that bad. Yeah, it is that bad. Like, it's like
terrible.
It's not. It's terrible. But like I said, I think wild waves. Like, because I asked my wife who grew up in Washington. I said, "What's the Washington?" It took her like 0.4 seconds. She goes, "Oh, wild waves." It looks awesome off the freeway. It seems like a good time. You get to wild waves in Federal Way. It's terrible. It's terrible.
It's pretty gross.
Yeah.
KJ Wright, I believe, went to Wild Waves for his birthday when he was in the NFL.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which is hilarious to think about. I think it was his second or third year. He told me that he went to Wild Waves for his birthday because he wanted to go to the water slides.
They look awesome off the freeway, and then you get there and you're like, oh boy, this is something. Hey, Danny, thanks so much for hanging out. Always love catching up with you. Always love talking with you. Have a great week, and we'll hopefully get you on sooner this time.
Sounds good. Good to talk to you, Justin.
There you go, Danny O'Neill. We have got hour number 2 to wrap up next. 620 Rip City Radio. All right, time to wrap up hour number 2. Big thanks to Danny O'Neill joining us last segment. I mean, it is one of those things, right? Unless you were like there's an age range as an Oregonian, as a kid that grew up here in the great state of Oregon, as I did, and probably most of you did as well. There's like an age range for the Enchanted Forest. Because if you were to go to the Enchanted Forest when you were, say, 4 or 5, and you knew nothing else, like you knew nothing else of the world other than, hey, we're gonna go see Humpty Dumpty, and we're gonna go Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I think they got that there. It's a pretty cool place, but like. If you were like me, or if you were like Danny, or hey, Shacker, you ever been to the Enchanted Forest? Did you go there as a child? Okay.
Never been there.
Okay.
But I've driven by it probably 3,000 times.
Yeah, everybody's driven by it, and that's the thing. That's and again, like Danny said, and it's not the Enchanted Forest fault. It is what it is. The fault is the imagination in kids' minds of what you think it's going to be, because you drive by it on the freeway and you see the sign out there and you're like, this looks pretty cool. And it's all like kind of behind all the vegetation and obviously because they want you to pay to get in. And then you get in there and you're like, if you like have been to, I mean, even the state fair, but like if you had been to Disneyland, or if you had been to Universal Studios, or you've been to even Great America, like in San Jose, you've been to an actual amusement park, or like I said, even the state fair, before you went to Enchanted Forest, you were going to be let down. You were going to be let down like massively. And that's ultimately it's big problem. As you drive by it and you're like, oh, this is an amusement. Yeah, you get back there, like, no, it's not. And again, not the Enchanted Forest fault, but if you were a middle schooler from Southern Oregon, like I was, like Danny was, and you're on a yellow bus driving for hours upon hours upon hours, and you're like, yeah, all right, we're going to go up to Portland. It's going to take probably 3-4 hours to get there. We're going to do the zoo. We're going to do OMSI, but we're going to stop off at Enchanted Forest. And you're like, all right. And you're like, what on earth is this? But I think there's I think every kind of place has that. I mentioned as a kid, I very much remember driving up I-5, going to Seattle, and in the summer, going to go to the Kingdom, going to go to a couple of Mariner games, right? Going to go watch Griffey, going to go watch Jay Buhner. And the first hit you have of Seattle metro area after you get through Tacoma, there you go through Tacoma and you're in traffic at the Tacoma Dome, because that's forever, always traffic at the Tacoma Dome. You're like, oh, hey, there's the Tacoma Dome. That's cool. It's not quite the Kingdom, but that's an interesting thing. And then you keep going. And you, especially in the summer, if you're driving up to Seattle, going up for some Mariner games, and you're like, Wild Waves looks like the greatest place in the world. It is bright. It is colorful. There's a big, giant water slide. And then, if you get to Wild Waves and you get in and you're like, this place, it is massively crowded. It's a lot of standing in line for not a lot of fun. At least when you go to Disneyland and you stand in line at Space Mountain, you get to ride Space Mountain. Space Mountain's awesome. Or you get to ride Thunder Mountain Railroad. You go to Wild Waves and you're like, all right, I'm standing in line for 45 minutes to get on a water slide that's not very fast. The pool is overcrowded. The line at the concessions is massively long. I'm wet in my bathing suit. But from the freeway, Freeway looks awesome. And I think that's kind of Enchanted Forest. They used to have a whole like other thing next to Enchanted Forest with and I never like a whole other amusement park with kind of a roller coaster that was maybe a little bit better than the roller coaster you would ride at the fair. Clearly not up to actual amusement park standards, but like maybe a little bit better than like the state fair. But yeah, once you get past like age 8 or 9 and you've been to an amusement park and you're like, hey, we're going to Enchanted Forest, and you go in there and you're like, this is such a letdown. Apologies to Humpty Dumpty. He's just up there on that sign, just kicking it, just hanging out. All right, coming up, Chad Doing's going to join us in hour number 3. We also are going to go back over some of the discussions on NFL rule changes. Blazers get a couple of nice wins. They're facing the Timberwolves tonight. And an RCM mailbag. That's all next, 620 Rip City Radio. It is 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. Justin Meyers with you. Portland Trail Blazers coming off of back-to-back wins against the Memphis Grizzlies over the weekend. They'll be taking on now West-leading Minnesota Timberwolves. Tip-off is set for 5 o'clock tonight. Some good injury news for the Blazers. DeAndre Ayton has been upgraded from doubtful to questionable, but Jeremy Grant listed as doubtful. Scoot Henderson, Malcolm Brogdon still out along with Shaedon Sharpe. Former Blazer Yusuf Nurkic broke the Phoenix Suns franchise record with 31 rebounds, the most in an NBA game in 13 seasons. Unfortunately, came in a 118-110 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder last night. Nurkic not happy with officials after the game. And Johnny Manziel, the 2012 Heisman Trophy winner, said Saturday that he will not attend the annual Heisman Trophy ceremony until the NCAA returns Reggie Bush's trophy back, which was stripped following NCAA sanctions. Coming up in 20 minutes, Chad Doing is going to be joining the show. We've got the RCM mailbag, and is it time for the chain gang in football to beat it? Hour 3 starts right now at 620 Rip City Radio. All right, welcome back to Rip City Mornings, everybody. As I mentioned in the update, Chad Doing is going to be joining us in 20 minutes. Talk some Blazers medium picture stuff. Like what has to happen for the Blazers the rest of the season? Like best case scenario. Because clearly wins and losses doesn't really matter anymore. They're not making a run at the postseason. They are not actively tanking. Because we've seen what that looks like, and that's not what we saw on Friday and Saturday. So they're not actively tanking games away, but they're not going to be making the playoffs anytime soon. What needs to happen for the Blazers the rest of the way out? And then obviously, what are the hard conversations and hard decisions that they're going to have to be made once the season officially wraps up? And I think it's 5 weeks away. I think we're about 5 weeks away. So we'll talk to Chad about that. Plus, maybe we'll get his thoughts on the Girl Scout cookies and the cracker rankings. By the way, Scotty said he threw out chicken and a biscuit in terms of the crackers that you cannot stop eating. Comanche threw out better cheddars. Shacker, Cheez-Its over better cheddars? Or either one
Always.
of them work?
Always, yeah. Better cheddar are inferior to Cheez-Its.
Do you think if I put you with a blindfold and like a better cheddar and a Cheez-It, you could tell the difference?
Yeah, and throw in some generic Cheez-Its too.
Just like, yeah, the ones you get at like the bin, like the bin at Winco. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I would like to do it. We'd have to get you in the studio though. We get the blindfold and the Cheez-Its. I don't know if I could
throw in some flavored Cheez-Its too. I'll be able to tell those apart.
Well, yeah, but we got to have a baseline, like just a like regular old better cheddars, and then Cheez-Its, and like you could tell, like obviously the Goldfish because of the shape, but like the Goldfish, like they've got kind of the same flavor profile. So you think you could, like, if I threw better cheddars and Cheez-Its in front of you, you could easily tell the difference?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and even Goldfish, if you grind them all up, I can go by the flavors. I'd be able to know the difference.
So, okay, that's how we would have to do it. We would have to smash them up, and, like, you would get, like, a spoon, like just a spoonful, and you could, like, tell the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too proud of it. I mean, I've eaten all of them multiple times in my life, many times, so I should be able to tell them all apart.
I was trying to think of, like, what, like, I do not have a refined palate. I know, like, stuff is good. I could probably do, like, and again, you talk about not proud of it. I could probably do, like, light beers. I could do Miller, Bud, Coors. Like, you put it in front of me, I'll tell you which one it is. Again, not proud of it, but I'm pretty sure I could blindfold taste test, like, like, just light beers. I could easily do that. Other than like better cheddars and cheese, I don't know. Like, is there like Ruffles and like wavy Lays? Like, you could tell the difference in texture there, because the Ruffles, the ridges are, I think, more narrow, like corduroy. But do you think you could tell the difference between like Lay's potato chips and like just What are the other ones? Just Lay's and just the other just regular old potato chips, like generic ones? How are you on chips? Or are you just a cracker guy?
More crackers than chips, but I mean, I think I could do it with Lay's and what's the other one? Kettle chips.
Well, the kettle chips
that'd
are
be
definitely thicker. Those are easier to figure out.
But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't stand behind potato. I don't eat enough potato
I
chips.
gotcha. I love chips. I love them so much. I really do. All right. So Chad Doing's going to be joining us in about 15 minutes. We do have an RCM mailbag. Mentioned with the combine going on, a lot of chatter, a lot of talk about potential rule changes. So this is a tweet from Tom Pelissero. Said, "End of the chain gang?" ? The NFL tested optical tracking in 2 stadiums and the Super Bowl last season for line-to-gain rulings, league officials said last week. The technology isn't expected to be ready to roll out in 2024, which is interesting that we don't have this technology yet, and would require a vote, but the future is coming. NFL continues to vet other technological advances, including a replay system with high-res cameras along the goal line, sideline, and end line, and a Skeletrack system tracking the ball, players and officials, making spotting more accurate, and fumbles and possession and all that stuff. Wearable smartphones to support officials have also been vetted and could be utilized as soon as 2024. So, like, officials could look like, like your buddy that's super into his Apple Watch, and just look at, like, we don't even need to, like, go to the earpiece anymore. Just go to the Apple Watch and just like, yep, that's a first. The chain gang thing is, like, absurd. And I know it's nostalgic, and I know it's the way we've always done it. And I am not a guy that wants to just infuse all the technology and take the soul out of sports. I don't like all the replays. I don't like the fact that we can't you can barely have a buzzer beater in basketball anymore. And I understand from a gambling perspective, all the gamblers love it because the last thing you want is, .5 left on the clock, and maybe but we don't have buzzer beaters anymore because too much technology is into the game. Or, like, the fact that players in baseball now can barely slide into a base because if a pinky finger comes off of second base, you can get called out. Like, too much technology is not always the answer. Some things just worked. Baseball don't need the replay technology for the bases. Do need technology with balls and strikes. We see it. I watch it. I watch baseball on TV. There's the strike zone right there. It's on, like, you pull up a baseball game track on your phone. You can see where every pitch was. I mean, the fact that in tennis they can track 130-mile-an-hour serve and find out if it's a millimeter off the line. We can't get a computer to figure out balls and strikes in baseball and get a consistent strike zone. It can be done. Don't want robot umpires. Just a robot strike zone. Still need a home plate umpire. Somebody still needs to kind of run the show. But, the assist of some technology, because, like I said, if you watch tennis, I think it's the Hawkeye technology or whatever it is. They serve the ball like 130 miles an hour. If it is a millimeter off of the line, the thing knows. We can do it in baseball. And the fact of the matter is, in football, where first downs are everything. I've said this so many times. Why are coaches nuts? Why are coaches wired the way that they are? Why are coaches so meticulous about certain things? Because one extra inch in football could be the difference between a turnover on downs and a first down. A first down can be the difference in a drive stalling and a drive continuing that could lead to points. Points could be the difference in one win or one loss. One win or one loss can be the difference in going to the playoffs or not. And going to the playoffs or not can be the difference in you having a job. It's a game of inches. I know it's a cliche thing, but it is in football. you could probably go back and track somebody's job back down to potentially 1 inch of football field. That's why coaches are nuts, by the way. Think about it. Like, you could lose your job based upon 1 inch because you didn't pick up that one first down, and that first down would have led to a drive continuing, that would have led to a field goal, that would have led to a win, that would have got you in a wild card, that would have got you in the postseason, that would have saved your job. First downs are so valuable. And we're still measuring with sticks and chains. Right? All I hear about from NFL people, like the gambling, and you got to get the calls right. We got to get the calls right. We got to get the calls right. All the gambling. And I understand that it's a business. It's a business deal. DraftKings and FanDuel and all of them, they're all in bed with the NFL. You need to get the calls right. What is a catch? We have to determine what is a catch. Did he survive the catch through the ground? All that stuff. High-res cameras, like I mentioned, on the goal line. We got first downs still decided by eyeballs and sticks and chains. We have GPS and we got lasers. Also, and again, I have never been one of these fans that said, oh, we got to speed up the game. I feel like football is one game where you don't need it to be sped up with like less commercials. But like college football, oh, we got to speed up the game. We got to speed up the game. We got to keep the clock going. It's like, well, oh, why? So you could plug in an extra game at the end so you can get ad revenue because fans don't care. But I will say, if we could speed up the charade, which is what it is, the charade of the chain gang, and I'm not saying get rid of the chain. They can still hang out there. Got to have a backup in case the lasers don't work, right? Anybody that's ever worked in broadcasting, right? You got to have a hard copy in case the teleprompter goes down. We got to have the chain gang there as just a backup. But if we could eliminate the chain gang running out, and then they, like, the poor chain gang, they're sitting there holding the chains the whole time. They don't even get to do the whole stretch, the chain out, first down. Like, they got to give up the gear. They got to give it up to the actual officials. And they're like, all right, we'll take over from here, chain gang. You just stand there and you just watch and try not to get in the way. We've got GPS. We know where everything is down to a millimeter on the field. Tracking systems, everything. That and a laser, boom. Is it a first down? Ball spotted. We know within a second. I know it's fun, and I'm not saying this actually in jest. I'm sure the NFL, like, do they really want to get rid of the drama that is, and then it's just that short, or there it is, the nose of the ball first. But like, have you seen the chains, by the way, when they do a close up, like they're all like taped up. Like, how do we know that's 10 yards? We're just like assuming, and I'm sure they measure them before every game. I'm sure they've got it all, but we're just assuming that the sticks are like perfectly 10 yards. There's not like a kink in that chain. It's taped up at the end. I do a lot of home improvement stuff. I measure stuff out to the half inch. I mess up every single time. We can't get a GPS and a laser. Keep the chain gang there. Backup. We got to have a backup. And just, all right, ball is spotted. Let's take a look. Shoot it with the laser. Yep, did not cross the plane. We're done. Fourth down. Moving on. I don't know what a Skeletrack system is in tracking the ball, the players and the officials, but if it can help spot, that's the other thing, right? We just trust the chain, and then a spot of a football is worth so much money, both to players, coaches, fans betting. And and by the way, NFL officials are amazing at spotting the ball. They are. I'll watch it. I'm like, they missed that spot, and then they'll go back and they'll replay. They are amazing at it. But if we can get some GPS in there, just be like, knee touched here. GPS says ball goes right there. Shoot it with the laser. Third down. Moving on. All right. Speaking of moving on, friend of the program, you know him as the host of Rip City Drive. Chad Doing going to be joining the show next on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Blazers back in action tonight. They'll be taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Tip-off is set for 5 o'clock. Pre-game coverage here on Rip City Radio will be hosted by our next guest, friend of the program, the host of Rip City Drive, and my brother in Hot Takes, Chad Doing on the Big Show. Good morning, Chad. How we doing, bud?
Well, I'm doing a lot better now that Shacker decided to bust out some old school Janet Jackson on a Monday morning. That is hot right there. Very nice.
It has been a ramp up in the music. He started off slow. I'm not gonna lie. Started off slow. The last couple of musical selections, he's closing strong, which I'm happy about and I'm proud of him.
Very good work, Shacker. We appreciate that.
Speaking of Shacker, Chad, he says that he could blindfolded tell the difference between a Cheez-It and a Better Cheddar. What do you think Shacker could pull off the difference between the Cheez-It and the Better Cheddar blindfolded taste test?
Yes, I do. There are certain things that I believe Shacker can do without question. That is definitely one. And I think you could too, and I know I could, because a Cheez-It's got a certain type of smell and freshness and crispness and taste, and I think you'd be able to tell the difference between that and a Better Cheddar. Absolutely.
Well, we were talking about this earlier. It's like because it's Girl Scout cookie time, and I've always talked about like the food that you cannot stop eating, even if you are full. And I've always said Mexican restaurant chips and salsa. You put it in front of me, Chad, I can't stop eating it. Cheddar Bay biscuits are in there. I think the breadsticks at Olive Garden, and then I said also the Girl Scout cookies, because they build the sleeves there, Chad, so that you can't reseal them on purpose. They do that on purpose, so you have to eat the whole sleeve of cookies.
I hate items that you buy that are not resealable, because you're right, man. And like I'm one of those guys where, and I'm sure you're the same way, but because I'm so in tune with nutrition and how many calories I consume and all that, like portion control is like my big thing. So if I open up a bag of chips, I pull out a portion, a serving, to know exactly how many calories I consume, because I don't want to sit down and eat a whole bag of chips or whatever the situation may be. And Girl Scout cookies are right there at the top of the list. And there was a lady who works in sales, and I was minding my own business a couple of weeks ago, and I came around the corner, and the cutest little girl was standing right between me and the door into the studio. And as soon as I made eye contact, I was like, oh man, I'm done. And I must have spent like 75 to $80 on things that I'm not going to consume, but I had to say yes. And then I thought about like Thin Mints and all these different things that they bust out on you. And I'm like, how am I going to avoid eating that so I don't consume 2,000 calories in one sitting? I don't need that in my life. But yet I couldn't say no, because I know the product is legit, and she was so cute.
Well, I saw, and this where it's almost unfair, I saw a whole Girl Scout troop set up in like the corner of a drive-through at Starbucks. So you're stuck, right? You're in the drive-through. You can't back out. You've already ordered, and there's like, hey, with your $7 coffee, maybe you want some Thin Mints or some Samoas. I'm like, I don't know who plotted off that real estate, but it was well done.
Yeah, that's almost like that's perfect. I almost don't like it because it's entrapment, because you have no choice. You know, like at least at a grocery store, when they're parked out on one side, you can, if you don't feel like stopping, you can try to do your best to avoid. It's very difficult to do that, but at least you have a shot. But if you're set up in a situation like that, you have no chance. Like I went through the drive-through at Burgerville last night. And it's frightening to think about how much money I spend at Burgerville or anyone else, because for some reason they're not low cost. But what I don't like is that they hand you the machine to plug in your card to make payment, and then they're like, oh, it's going to ask you a little question. And I'm thinking to myself, and we all know what the question is. It's like, you're going to have to tip. And I don't have a problem tipping, but I don't like the tactics in which they handle it, because this person's handling my food, and if I answer no to the question, what's she going to do to my food? So I feel like it's entrapment, and I don't like it. So of course I'm going to tip in that situation, because it's a no-win scenario. It's like if you don't tip, they might do something to your food, but if you do tip, we don't really have a choice. So there's no choice in the matter. I don't like no choices.
Well, and all right, so we've had this discussion multiple times, Chad. I don't want to be the Scottie Pippen, the no tipping Pippen. I don't want to be cheap guy. I I have an ultimate respect for people in the service industry because, quite frankly, Chad, I can't do it. I can't. I couldn't do it. I know you have done it. You were the Red Robin, for crying out loud. I could not do the job. I would be fired very, very fast because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I want to reward, but like the tipping before like I order on the Starbucks app and it said, "Would you like to add a tip?" And I was like, I don't know if you made the coffee well or not. And I have a very basic order. Now, luckily, I can go back after the fact, and I always do. But like that's where I don't like it, where it's like you want to add gratuity before I even know if you are good at your job.
It's very difficult. It's weird. It's like I always tip, like at a sit-down restaurant, different services. I always tip minimum 25%, but I do struggle with the fast food tipping because I guess it's because I'm not accustomed to it, right? You know, we didn't grow up doing it, and now all of a sudden you're adding tips to those type of things. What we do? Here's what we do at the Starbucks below where I live, because I go in there every single day. So what we do is me and the corner table every year, we collect money from all the people that are part of the corner table, and we give them a big cash bonus at the end of the year because we're in there every day. And so that's how I tip the people at Starbucks. Instead of tipping them every day, we just all contribute a large sum to the.
All right. There we go. Technological advancements. We were rolling, too. We were rolling. So I don't know, unfortunately, what happened to the feed. But hopefully, if Shacker is working his magic behind the scenes and trying to get Chad hopefully back on and reconnected. Didn't even get to any sports stuff, which, by the way, is par for the course for this show. But I guess we'll just wait and see if we can hopefully get Chad back on the line. Hopefully he's all okay as well. So this is my favorite part of live radio, which is, you know, when you've got a whole thing set up and ready to do, and then your guests and the technology just cuts out on you. And so then you get to vamp and figure it out. But yeah, we talked about it last hour. The Girl Scout cookie engineering that goes on, because it has to be done on purpose. You know that it probably would not cost more. Matter of fact, it might even cost less if they would just take like the boxes, change them to the resealable bag, and just you still get the same amount of Thin Mints or Samoas because they don't need to be in the perfect row and they don't need to be in the tray. Do we have Chad back on the line? Is that what I'm hearing? Chad, are we back? No.
All right.
We don't have it.
False alarm.
Okay. Almost. Super pumped. All right. But we were talking about with technology in football, like we don't need chain gangs anymore. We need lasers and GPS. The technology exists, but again, with the whole Girl Scout cookie thing, why would you want to have a resealable? It's like I've become oddly obsessed with supermarket psychology. So like the supermarket psychology is, if you notice, every time you go into a supermarket, the milk and eggs always in the back.
Why is that?
Because everybody needs milk and eggs. So milk and eggs are in the back. So guess what you have to do? You got to go all the way to the back, and you have to walk by all the cereal and all the crackers and all, like you have to walk by everything. It's put in the furthest away so that you walk by and you can indulge. That's why they put all the stuff at the cash register. It's why that You don't the normal everyday like business, right? Would be if you have a cart and that cart's got a little wobbly wheel, you get rid of that cart. No. No need to get rid of that cart. You've already, because we've all done it, where we grab a cart and you go and you're like, oh man, it's got a wobbly wheel. Guess what it does? Slows you down. It's all on purpose. It's all a whole thing. All right. Shacker, if you can hear me, or like if you can give me a percentage of
What's up, Justin?
There he is. He's back. How we doing? That's 100%.
Not good. You know how I am. It's like, you think it's bad to get, hammered at the Starbucks drive-thru by the Girl Scouts. Nothing worse than technical issues. It freaking drives me crazy.
All right. Well, I would give myself a C- on that vamp I just did. So we're going to transition. We're going to talk some sports now. I've asked this question a couple of times last week, and I want to get your thoughts because the Blazers have got a handful of games left, right? There's about 5 weeks left of the season. With the 2 wins and the way that they're playing, they're not actively tanking away games, but they're nowhere near the postseason. So if you look at this team, obviously injuries are a factor. What is the most important thing, according to you, that the Blazers accomplish in the rest of the season with the games in front of them?
Well, that's very easy. Number one is to get Scoot back on the floor and have him play out the rest of the games. He is the number one priority. I think player development for the young guys is the most important thing, but that starts with Scoot. So I expect him back on the floor when they host Oklahoma City on Wednesday to kick off the 6-game homestand. If he returns for that game, that would give him 22 games. I think it's critical for him to get back in, to continue the recent stretch prior to the All-Star break of good basketball so he can finish out the year with some confidence, enter the offseason with his rookie season under the belt, and then be able to come into camp ready to roll next year. I think that's number one. After that, I think continuing to work with and develop an even better understanding with DeAndre Ayton, because he's played well over the last 13 games prior to the hand injury. So those two things right there between Scoot and Ayton, and I think are critical.
So let's talk about the injuries because we haven't had a stretch for the Blazers this entire season where you had what essentially would I be like 7 of the 8 player rotation have all been healthy. Like it just hasn't. Again, it may have happened in the first 2 weeks that I have forgotten about, but we haven't seen a stretch of games where you had Ant, Scoot, Shaden, Brogdon, Grant, Thibault, Ayton all healthy at the same time. Is this just bad luck, Chad? Is this team being cautious? And I'm wondering, because remember, their training staff got thrown under the bus last year by GP2 and Shams Charania about, forcing him to play. Do you think there's any of that there, or is this just bad injury luck this season?
Yeah, I think it's just bad luck. Ant had the thumb surgery right out of the gate, so he missed a large portion of the season. Scoot Henderson had the bone bruise early in the season. Robert Williams tore a knee ligament, had to have surgery. He was done for the rest of the year. Another core injury and surgery for Shaden Sharp. Malcolm Brogdon's missed an extended stretch. I mean, the weird thing is about this team is, like, if healthy, they're not a 16 or 17 win team. They would be much better. It wouldn't look quite the way that it does. But this team has been hit so badly. In fact, I think the two areas, I think they lead the league in games played by rookies. And at last check, they're like number 2 in games lost to injury. So you combine those two factors, and that kind of tells you about the season right there, because no continuity. You don't have the same guys on the floor. The new players are adjusting to new teammates every time they take the floor, and it just creates a big mess for Coach Billups and the rest of the staff and the players too.
So you got the Blazers back in action tonight. They'll be taking on the Timberwolves. Before I let you go, Chad, I did want to talk about some NFL stuff. I don't know if you heard about maybe potential rule changes. I have been on this for years. I want the chain, like the fact that we still have a chain gang in the NFL is amazing to me. We have GPS and lasers in our world.
Yeah.
And then we got, a bunch of, 65-year-old dudes holding up sticks with chains attached to them that is determining first downs or not is interesting to me. Are you with me on we'll keep the old guys there, but like we'll make them like the backup and we can get like some lasers or like just make the yellow line on TV like official, like, oh, it's unofficial. Well, let's just make it official.
Yeah, why do we have to keep the old guys there? Why not just boot them out? And then on top of that, what about the 70-year-old guy standing underneath the uprights, looking up in the sky with cataracts, trying to tell me if a ball went through a couple of, yellow poles? We don't have lasers for that either. We don't have sensors. You kidding me? So, no, time to move out with the old dudes and to roll out some technology to make sure that they can figure this thing out. And you're right, the chain gang, it is amazing to me. It's a billion, multi-billions that league brings in, and you got two old dudes rolling out with these old chains, trying to figure out whether or not a guy got a first down. And not only that, but there's got a way to – I love the official that comes in after we all watch the player go down, and he thinks he's got the eye on the spot, too, and he's like a yard ahead or a yard behind. It's maddening to me that the league is so great and yet so pathetic all at the same time.
All right, so here are a couple of things that they're talking about at the Combine in terms of maybe potential rule changes in the NFL. Just want your thoughts on like the thing that you think is maybe the most important. There's changing the kickoff rules, and to where you would have to almost declare that you're doing an onside kick or making an onside kick a first or a 4th and 20 play. Mm-hmm. Finally talking about getting rid of the end zone fumble, making it a touchback, fumble out of the back of the end zone, and then the tush push, going back to the old rule where you can't aid the runner. Which of those do you think we need to have some serious football discussion on?
Well, I want the tush push to stay. I don't have a problem with that. The fumble into the end zone, that should definitely be changed. And I am in favor. I think the 4th down and 20 play instead of an onside kick should be done, because can you imagine the excitement that it would create at the end of a football game? I would have no issue with that whatsoever. So, but of those three right there, the biggest thing is the fumble into the end zone, and the fact that the team, if you fumble it in the end zone, the other team recovers, you take it to 20. They may want to look at that one. That seems a little bit harsh.
That one, I kind of looked back and I was trying to figure out like why is this even a rule? Right? It doesn't make like a safety. All right, that makes a lot of sense. You get a team into the back of their own end zone, you get 2 points and you get the ball. Like that rule makes sense. This one is like, of all the rules in the NFL, doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's because some teams used to fumble the ball into the end zone on purpose. So they wanted to, but you can't do that anymore because of the holy roller. Bring it back to the spot of the fumble. Call it good. Let's just keep playing.
Yeah, so if a team fumbles and the ball rolls out of the end zone, but no one recovers, you just want the ball to go back to the spot of the fumble.
Yeah, I don't want them to be getting touchdowns. You shouldn't be able to fumble it into the end, which you can't do anyways. But, yeah, like you get a guy on like the 3-yard line, and the ball, like the tip of the ball clips the pylon, and all of a sudden, nope, that's a touchback. The other team gets it, or a millimeter the other way. It's, 2nd and goal on the 1-inch line. Like that's it. It's an easy fix.
I agree. Move it back to the spot of the fumble, and then you proceed from there. So if you drive the ball down, 85, 90 yards, you get into that position, you fumble it out of the end zone. And you're right. Like if it happens in anywhere else on the field, if you were to fumble a football forward out of bounds, it would go back to the spot of the fumble, and you would just keep playing. The ball would not, change hands, and they wouldn't get 20 yards of field position. So I'm with you on that. I think we all agree that's a little bit ridiculous.
And then finally, last hour, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I worked with in Seattle, Danny O'Neill. Danny grew up in Klamath Falls, Chad, and he recalls his first middle school visit to the Enchanted Forest and how bummed out he was, and he's kind of held a grudge against the Enchanted Forest forever, going off of the freeway and going in and expecting it to be an amusement park. Have you ever been to the Enchanted Forest?
Are you talking about the one that's like down there close to Turner, right below Salem?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. It completely sucks. I went there one.
All right, there we go. And that's our time. All right, we're going to shut it down at that particular point. We got strike 1, strike 2. We're not going to let it get to strike 3. We're going to bounce. I think that was Humpty Dumpty shutting off the feed. I'm sure whatever Chad's hot take, I'm sure it was fantastic. But we are going to move on, and we've got the RCM mailbag to wrap up the show next, 620 Rip City Radio. right, time to wrap up the big show. We do that the same way each and every day with the RCM mailbag. Random questions, any subject, any topic. Nothing is off limits, and I repeat, will not duck the tough questions, even though Michael Shacker's version of the mailbag gets uncomfortable sometimes. It gets awkward sometimes. So let's waste no more time. Let's head to the mailbag right now. Fire it up. All right, Shacker, how are we feeling about your mailbag today? Are we feeling confident?
Well, I need to know, is there an enchanted forest conspiracy where you're not allowed to talk bad about him? And if you do, you lose your guest.
Apparently so. I think, like I said, is Humpty Dumpty like the head of some kind of enchanted forest mafia or mafioso, where it was like, all right, you talk bad for one segment, we'll give you that one, big boy. And the moment we got into it again, we lost it. Like, I thought it might have been like of all the things we could blame for Chad being bounced off the air twice, Starbucks corporate, right? Because we were talking about the Starbucks tipping. Maybe he threw a little jab at Burgerville there. Did you notice the little Burgerville jab he threw? So I thought
About
maybe
their prices, yeah. Everyone says that.
Maybe
though.
Burgerville, like they hold some power around these parts. You know what I mean? And then at the end, then it was the Enchanted Forest, like Humpty Dumpty and all the king's horses, all the king's men. I'm gonna pop Chad off the air so he can talk to Justin never again. See what I did there? So yeah, we got a lot of suspects. I would suspect Wi-Fi coverage is exactly what I would suspect, but you never know. I expect a full investigation. A full investigation. All right. Do you have any other mailbag questions?
Yes, I got one for you. If the chain gang goes away, will more jobs be gained or lost? Because you have computer programmers, you have graphics people.
Because it is true. Like, you're going to have to get rid of the three dudes that just kind of stand there. Because you got one, like the start of the chain. Like, do you think they have to bargain over who gets the first down half of the chain? Because that's got to be like a bummer, right? You're like, the one guy gets the down marker, and so you get to change it from first down to second down, and you're like, so you got something to do, but it's some responsibility. The guy on the first down side of the chain, you get that cool orange, arrow right there, and you're, but in third place by not even a bronze medal, the guy who, or the person, I should say, who holds the initial part of the first down marker. Like, do you think they switch at halftime or something? But so you get rid of those three, and then you would probably add jobs. I'm not this shouldn't surprise anybody, but I'm not a tech wizard. But I would assume, like anything else, we're going to have backups upon backups upon backups, and we're going to need at least a dozen people on this, right?
It's one of those backups, another chain gang, like a backup chain gang if the computers go down.
I mean, that's what I said. Like, the three people on the sideline, they're always going to be there, right? Just like for aesthetics, we're just going to keep them there. But that's the backup if if the laser goes down. Which is funny that me and Chad were sitting here talking about how we need to put more technology into the sport, and the technology popped Chad off the air twice. Maybe that was the whole thing. Maybe it was, lo-fi was trying to teach us a lesson, and the universe was trying to be like, you guys want to get rid of sticks and chains that measure out 10 yards that are tried and true, but yet you can't even get a simple connection via the radio. Yeah, you want robot umpires in baseball for balls and strikes? Justin, you can't even keep your guest on for more than 8 minutes before the technology. Shacker, is the universe telling us something? I think it might be.
I'm glad the universe is listening.
I would. Universe is always listening. That's the tricky thing about the universe, right? Always ears open. You'll never catch the universe slipping, and it's always out there. There's always something to just throw it right back in your face. You got one more, or are we need to wrap?
This one will take too long. I'll save it for tomorrow. Yeah, let's talk about crackers.
You want to talk about crackers some more?
All those crackers, I could tell by the shape. We would have to do it all grounded up on a spoon to make this taste test work. Blind taste test.
I may be a cracker novice here, but like, aren't better cheddars almost kind of the same as Cheez-Its? Or are they very, very different?
Different thickness, different flakiness. So I would have to go by flavor, and your ground up on a spoon idea is probably the best way to do it.
Okay. I'm looking at better cheddars right now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You'd definitely be able to tell. They're because they're round, and the Cheez-Its are square. I definitely am a cracker novice. We don't have to ground them into like a powder, but just kind of bottom of the bag. You know what I mean? We just get the bottom of we just open them from upside down, get bottom of the bag. We'll be good to go.
How do you get it out? Do you open the bag from the bottom? Because if you flip the bag upside down, the bottom becomes the top.
Because I feel yeah, I know. However the writing is, I don't know. But I feel like you crunch it up too much, it might affect, flavor. Like the flavor profile. Like you're supposed to eat a cracker a certain way. We got to break them up a little bit, but we definitely can't let you realize the corners because the better cheddars are round. All right, that's going to do it for the big show. Thanks to Danny O'Neill. Thanks to Chad Dewing. Thanks to Michael Shacker. Thanks to all of you for hanging with us. We're back tomorrow morning, bright and early here on 620 Rip City Radio.